Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see that the room is more than 70% full still, which is very, very encouraging. It's been a long day, I'm sure, for everybody, but I hope this session will kind of tie everything together. Whatever you've heard through the day will get tied together in this session. We've got some fantastic panelists on this panel. We're just waiting for one other gentleman to join us. But while he does, let me just introduce the subject that we're going to be talking about. And that subject is operations. Operations is something which is typically, all the sexy stuff happens in the morning, the strategy and the marketing and brand building and all of that stuff happens earlier in the day, and operations is always kind of, the backroom boys always get pushed down the list to the end of the day. But the fact is that when we're talking about any kind of a retail or consumer-facing operation, it falls apart if you don't have your operations framework in place and strong. So as a context to whatever the panelists will say, I'd like to share one perspective, which is when you look at a brand, whether you're a franchisee or whether you're a franchisor, when you look at the success of any brand, both those elements have to work very well together. Both those elements have to be very strong. If you have a very strong franchisor, you're a very strong brand, but you've got a weak franchisee, then it's inevitable that your brand will suffer in the market because the consumer walks into your store, your outlet, thinking about your brand, and the experience that she or he goes through in that outlet is in the hands of the franchisee. If they're weak, then at best, you might be left with a dissatisfied customer. If they're really bad, you might be left with no customer at all because that customer might never come back to your brand. None of the outlets, forget that one, right? The reverse is also true. If you've got a very strong franchisee, but you've got a weak franchisor at the back end, a lot of things that are related to making the brand a success actually lie in the hands of the franchisor. And if you don't really have a strong organization, if you don't have strong processes and systems to support the franchisee network, then it's inevitable that the brand will fall flat. And we've seen a number of those examples in the last 25 odd years that I've been involved with franchising and retail in this country. We've seen a number of brands go out of business for that reason, that the franchisee has got a fantastic location, they've got a fantastic store, they're very entrepreneurial, they've got all the money in place and everything else is fine, but the brand itself is weak. And that essentially is the nature of this business. Both the business partners, both the associates have to work really hand in hand, both have to deliver on what their contribution to the relationship is, otherwise the relationship doesn't work, the brand doesn't work, the business doesn't work, right? Having put that context in front of you, I'd like to invite the panelists to describe from their perspective in their businesses and also what they see in the industry, what they feel operations has contributed to their business, what role it has to play in the growth of the business in the future, and what are the areas that we commonly don't think about, which perhaps this audience could benefit from in your opinion. So Anuj, would you like to kick off?
Hi. Hello. Yeah, I'm Anuj Jain. I'm CEO of Jindal Lifestyle Limited. It's part of Jindal Steel. And we have got a brand which is known as Ardinox. Now it's a brand, the panel here, people have around 500 stores or 1,000 stores. But the company which I'm working for is right now having around 15 franchisees only in the country. But this brand is around 10-year-old and it's closed down 2 times in last 10 years. The reason of closing down was, again, wrong franchising. I'm not saying wrong franchisor or franchisee. It's wrong franchising. The reason of wrong franchising was that we were not very clear about what the model was. A lot of time we have seen that franchisor, his revenue is even less than the rental he's paying for his showroom. So we have gone through models a lot of time. We have seen that product also which we were selling, where the product is supposed they don't get sold and they come back to your plant, they can't be sold at all because stainless steel get dented. So it's a crazy kind of business to be in, but since we are Jindal Steel, we wanted to win, so we decided to tweak the model in such a way that it is good for franchising. So what we did in last around 6 years is that we have played around with few models, whereby we had a showroom of 800 square feet, we have a showroom of 5,000 square feet, we have a showroom of even 15,000 square feet also. And we played around with product range also. Apart from tableware, we have gone into modular kitchens, which is much more easier to sell, though it's a smaller market, but not in terms of size, numbers, but in size. And then we've added a lot of new products, like in architectural products, other things. And what we realize is that while going through all this process, is that once each store is profitable, whatever model is profitable for you, only that can be replicated. If we try to replicate a model which is half-hearted or which is not making money for us, you are going to add losses to people. Now, when you are saying profitable, profits does not come without operations. They come from operation efficiencies, they come from product range, they come from real estate selection, they come from size. These are all part of operation actually, if you look at, except maybe product designing to some extent. So in last around 4 or 5 years, what we have seen is that when we are replicating models, there were a few models for us which were making money, and we started replicating those models. And we have got franchisees who are ranging from, let's say, 800 square feet showroom, which is a pop-up showroom, to around 5,000 square feet showroom, and they all are making money. We are in luxury space. Luxury space is one of the most difficult to franchise because of the way you communicate with customer. Even the person who is handling a product has to come out very nicely. A lot of times we have seen is that if suppose your franchisee manager is not so good about handling luxury product, that's very difficult to really communicate your brand ethos to the customer. Our kitchens normally cost around 20 lakh plus. So it's a task to sell, actually speaking. And so what we have done in last around 5-6 years is that we have been very conscious about the size, the product range, and mainly the operation part. Operation part in the sense, we have delegated only those operations where customer interface is required. But once the customer comes and decide to buy our kitchens or maybe a product, then they start interfacing with our backend team, which is our control team within our system. Like designing the kitchen, delivering the kitchen, installation of the kitchen is controlled by us. Because we know that if suppose we start delegating these functions, there might be different customer experiences. So this is how very important part of my learning in this company is that, though I worked in companies where we have done 500 franchises also, is that replicate only those businesses where you are very sure of, replicate only those processes where you are 100% sure of that they are right processes, and keep tweaking the processes in such a way that they are making life easier, not life difficult. A lot of times I've seen a lot of companies make a lot of processes and they make really life difficult. Believe me, the franchisee is like very easy way of doing a business. So my whole idea is that if suppose you are so nimble-footed that you can change your processes, you can replicate those processes in larger scale, then you can grow faster. This is what my company is all about. Thanks.
So, Anuj, I have a question for you. Because you're operating in the premium and luxury space, you need to go, as you mentioned yourself, the customer interface is something which is very critical, and you have to have the right kind of management of that interface. That relationship has to be managed fairly sensitively and cleverly. How do you go about selecting the franchisee? What makes you think one is a better franchisee than the other? At the selection phase, you haven't worked with them, obviously, and then also reflecting upon the people who the franchisee will run the store with. What role do you play, does the company play in that?
See, selection of franchisee, if we have got a lot of inquiries coming from investors. Now, I'm not saying that investors are not good franchisees, but their mindset is more towards what is my ROI to start with. So they are not bothered much about, okay, how I handle customers. So we have been very careful about selecting the franchisee. Most of the time since it's a product which is directed towards women, more or less the decision maker is women. So most of our franchisees are being handled by women. They are women entrepreneurs who are handling these. And they belong to a family which understand luxury. Because when you're selling a kitchen worth around 25 lakh, 30 lakhs, then you should be able to empathize with the person who's buying your product. So one point is that. Second is when you're selecting your sales team for the store, then definitely once your franchisee is right, then sales team also fall in line, because it's your own personality which get translated into a product experience, actually speaking. So that is one part. Second part is that once we are selecting, I mean, we are talking to a franchisee to become to a prospective franchisee to become franchisee of ours. They visit our showroom many times. In fact, even if suppose we are not saying that, okay, you become a franchisee, a lot of franchisees would like to visit you again and again to understand whether you're a right franchisor or not. So they take a lot of ideas from how we are doing things. In fact, if you look at our showrooms which we handle directly, there are people who are working with us for last 5 years or 7 years. I don't let my salespeople go, whatever it may take. I don't let, because it's very difficult to train salespeople who are handling customers and who understand what is luxury. Very difficult. It's the most difficult task we have come across. So we ensure that our sales team is very consistent, and these people, when they come to our store, they learn a lot of ideas. And these salespeople also go to their stores when we are making franchisee to impart knowledge on how to handle the customer. So this is what we do normally.
Great. Moving from a luxury product to something which is common, dal roti and beyond, dosa and idli. Murli, you've got possibly a unique problem that from in the food business, you're putting a lot of, and the business model that you've got, you're putting a lot at stake at the front end. The food is getting prepared at the front end, and there's a lot of unpredictable. I mean, it's not just the service element now, it's the product itself which is at stake. So you've got a major problem as far as operations is concerned, potentially. How do you deal with that?
I think good
Maybe
question.
you can start with describing your business a little bit and then...
Yeah, so just a brief background about Sagaratna is about a 29-year-old brand. We just bought this company about 4 years back. Hello. Yeah. About 4 years back is when we picked up this brand. And the difficulty was, it was a completely people-oriented business. Every restaurant on its own was a business unit in itself. And if one had to dream big in terms of saying, how do we take these 20, 30 restaurants to 500 restaurants, you needed to move from a people to a process-oriented company. And that's the struggle that we have been going through for the past 3-4 years. So the question is right, like, I mean, one, and this industry has another challenge, and that's about having an attrition rate, both in the FOH and BOH, of not less than 40 to 50%. I would be surprised if anybody is actually operating at less than that. That's the challenge actually this industry faces. But despite that, you need to keep yourself in business and even your franchisors and franchisee in the business. And that's definitely one of the challenges. And we basically, what we have done is crack this problem from a perspective of keeping some additional manpower always available as a part of the training, regularly hiring people, training them, and continuously. It's like a factory that you need to have a few people always available. Certain key skills have been identified, saying that these are important skills, and therefore the number of people additionally that will be kept in the system will be XYZ. So there is a ratio in which all the different skills work. And that's how we have cracked that particular problem. But I wouldn't say, like, I mean, it's a 100% solution. We still need to evolve and become better at that. Just on the business front, again, while trying to solve this franchisee-franchisor relationship piece, the relationship begins much earlier as you start talking to them. It's about finding the right real estate first. And sometimes you get a franchise who has been in the same trade, and most of the times he or she is not. So the ability to converse with them and make them understand why the real estate that you pick up is important, or why location is very critical in this business, is again a discussion that needs to be had. So we need to cross every step of this process, like, I mean, hand-holding them on identifying the real estate, to basically building the project itself, having our own project team stationed over there to ensure that the design or whatever that has been approved needs to be executed the way we want. Some of the people don't understand why the water lines need to be in a particular way, or the drainage lines need to. I mean, there are a host of detailing. I mean, not for this audience, I guess, but and everything needs to be actually. You have to take them through the entire process. So we have groups of people now. There are multiple project teams. There are multiple NSO teams, so we call, which is the new store opening teams. There is a F&B quality audit team that needs to actually go and report saying how's the quality, and audit the operations and report to the operations as well. So that there is a continuous process. So what I would like to say, there are different stages of the life cycle of building this franchisee relationship, and every aspect of it needs to be covered. And we've been basically taking this journey now, and we're currently about 92 restaurants and hope to reach about 200, hopefully, in a couple of years. That helps.
And to the question of how do you crack that unpredictability problem of service and product unpredictability?
So this is the difficult part now, where we don't have a standard die that makes one product. So we have a chef who makes sambar, for example. If I have to take our restaurants, there is a chef who makes sambar only. There are chefs who make only idlis and vadas, or the batters, so to say. So the ability to actually go back and de-skill this completely and say okay, this is the product, this is the raw material, identifying, saying these are the specs that needs to be used for the raw material, this is the proportion in which each of them needs to be used. We've done some part of it. Whereas on the sambar piece, for example, what we've done is we've taken the spice mix out of the problem and said this is the spice mix which we readily make at one location just for the consistency piece, and then supply that piece to the rest of the restaurants, which is then becoming a regular raw material. So that's how we are trying to bring that consistency of taste to some extent. On the batters front, the mix basically in terms of the dals, what proportion of the rice or the dals need to be put in. So there is a standard specification, but obviously there are 15 or say hundreds of types of rice that is available, or some 15 types of urad dal that is available. So you need to standardize some of them. It's difficult. We're bringing the process, what we do in some of our restaurants right now is mixing the dal, pre-mixed and in proportions packed, so they know exactly what quantity needs to be used, what is the water quantity that needs to be used, and therefore, that's the... So there is an attempt that is being made, but we have still not crossed the complete journey yet.
Great. Okay.